Welcome to Hope is Here. My name is Greg Horn, and one of the things I love about doing this ministry is that I get to share it with friends of mine, and one of my really good friends is sitting across from me today. We serve together on staff at Northeast Christian Church, a man of many, many talents. His name is Reggie Smith. It'll look like Reggie when you see it, but he's such a cool guy. He doesn't say it that way. It's Reggie, and a guy that's got a heart of gold. When I think of servant leaders, there's nobody that I think of any more of than this guy right here, a guy that is selfless, has been the hands and feet of Jesus for many, many people, and like me, had some success in the business world, but went through a little trial and tribulation. And so next 3 days you're going to be hearing Reggie's story, and I really think you're going to be blessed. One of the things I like about Reggie probably that I didn't know after we got to know each other is that he's got some good Eastern Kentucky roots like my dad. My dad grew up in Inez, Kentucky, and Reggie, you were born and raised up in where?
In Pikeville.
Pike, Vegas.
Yes.
All right. Well, tell us a little bit about you grew up in that area, and then.
Well, I grew up in Pikeville. My biggest desire was, from the time I was 10 years old, to be an Air Force pilot. And, of course, I went through high school and college at Eastern Kentucky University, signed up with the Air Force, took the physical, passed, and took the written exam to qualify for pilot training, passed that. And 5 or 6 weeks later, I get a call going back to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. They had to do another hearing test, and I had a high-frequency hearing loss, and that just kind of washed out my dreams.
Oh, man.
So I started into banking. For 13 years, I was a banker, and then I got a job offer with a coal company as a controller for 2 years. After that, I went into an investment brokerage business, which I served 19 years there. So,
okay.
And the 19 years was very successful. I started out dealing in stocks and bonds naturally, and building a good client base and building a good income for myself and a great family life. I had 3 children, and now I have 4 grandchildren, and I have them scattered all over the country right now. But those dreams kind of fell apart. They went backward on me when I did something very wrong.
Well, before we get to that, and I appreciate that, because all of us have at times in our lives, and I love how you've let a scar become a lot of people's stars, because I know you've encouraged a lot of people over the years. But, I mean, I know obviously you didn't get to fulfill the Air Force dream, but you still were able to have a plane and fly something, weren't you?
Yes, I did become a private pilot, and my brother and I owned an airplane we went through 3 airplanes.
Wow.
Over a few years.
Okay. And I know also you served as a volunteer in your community. I think you helped out with the board of education, some things like that.
That's right. I was a treasurer of the church, the Pikeville United Methodist Church. I was also a member of the CAPRO Club. I was 20 years on the Pikeville Independent School Board. I served as president of the Pikeville JCs, president of the Pike County Chamber of Commerce. They very focused on public service and loved doing that.
Well, Reggie's such a humble guy. He didn't want to bring any of that up, and I love that about him. But I want you to understand this guy was a leader. And when I say servant leader, I mean he was doing that, but a lot of success. Like I said, obviously when you go through 3 airplanes, you're doing a lot of flying, and you've made some good income. But you can hear from being on the board of education there with Pikeville Independent Schools, just all the things that he was a part of. And one thing about Reggie, too, is he is a ZZ Top, which I know is not very Christian, but they had a song called, every girl's crazy about a sharp-dressed man. Well, I don't mean the every girl part, but the sharp-dressed man part. Reggie always dresses well, whether it's casual or whether he is, speaking, preaching at a funeral or doing a wedding. The guy just always exudes class. But like all of us, life kind of got tough and took a tough turn for you and kind of put you in a spot where you had some tough decisions. And like all of us, maybe didn't make the wisest. But just share a little bit about that part of what happened, Reggie.
Well, I was doing well, and I was asked to renovate a hotel building. And the hotel building was right on Main Street in Pikeville. It was literally abandoned. It was a fire hazard for downtown Pikeville. If that thing would have burned, it would have burned half the city down. So I agreed to do that. I volunteered I bought the property. I was approved for a loan to do the building and transferring this hotel building into an apartment complex. and a bank had agreed to do the financing for the project. It was a $1.8 million project.
And when was this, Ray? What time frame?
This was in the 1998, 97.
Oh, wow. So that, gosh, it'd be like double that probably now. So
exactly. And the thing that happened is they told me I had to do the demolition first. Well, it took pretty much everything that I had to demolish. You can imagine 4-story hotel building, and to get it ready to do a complete interior rebuild. And I ran into a lot of financial difficulty doing that, and then the bank turned me down on the $1.8 million loan that they had agreed to do. So I went back to my office, and on the very same day I had a fax that from a venture capitalist that said, we're looking for loans of $500,000 to $5 million. So I said, that fits me perfect. So I called this number, and the guy said, that sounds like the kind of project we're looking for. I'm going to send you an application. You fill it out and send it back. I did that evening. The next day he called me and said, I've already got you approved. I'll have your money to you in 30 to 60 days. I need a loan guarantee fee of $7,500. I sent that to him. And those 30 to 60 days turned into months and months. And while I was doing that, I made a wrong decision. I took advantage of my clients by selling short-term bonds that didn't exist. I knew I could have that money back to them in no time. And
if you were waiting on his money to come through, right?
Yes, waiting on his money to come through, and it never did. And I found out that he was a fraud, that he had done it before, and he'd been in prison for it before. That $1.8 million project ended up costing over $4 million, where I'd lost money trying to get that thing back and pay the people back that I'd taken money from. So it just kept pyramiding to the point that I couldn't handle it anymore. So when auditors approached me with that, I just told them what I'd done and who I had taken money from. Insurance covered most of the losses, but still, you destroy your reputation, your integrity is destroyed. From the time I did that first transaction, I was miserable. I had everything that a man could ever want, and I got myself into a mess, and I lost everything that I had.
And how old were you at that time, Reggie?
I was 54 years old, 53, 54 years old.
So leading up to that, though, before the couple years where all this went down, I mean, by the world standards, you were quote living the American dream. Is that fair to say?
Absolutely. I had a beautiful home. My wife and I had 5 cars in the driveway. It's kind of crazy. We had Jaguars and Explorers and Miata, pickup truck, everything that any man would ever want. And the home was beautiful. A 2-story home with a full basement that overlooked the mountainside. It was on a cliff of a mountain. So I was living in the American dream, but later found out it really wasn't a dream. I was more miserable in that than I was happy, because the more you have, the harder it is to maintain, and the more you want. So you think you want something and you like it, and you think, oh boy, I'm going to buy this too. And before you know it, I'd bought my children new cars for graduation. I got them all through college. And then everything hit the fan after they graduated from college and gone out on their own. And that was a blessing in itself that I'd had them taken care of.
Absolutely, and I think that's one of the things I want to say to our listeners today is you hear Reggie sharing his story, and unfortunately, it is going to take, you can tell it's going to take a major turn for the worse after just all the things that have happened. The fraud from the guy that was supposed to loan him the money took his $7,500, and Reggie waiting, and then trying to cover that with, some of his people that were investing money with him. And so hoping that, say, hey, I'll get this done. I can pay him back. But as he looks back, rewinds the clock, as he said, his kids were all able to get through schools. He was able to bless them with, a car before all this just took a turn for the worse. And I think that's one of the things that, Reggie, sometimes for me, man, even in the storms, I forget that, God's still there, isn't he?
Yes, he is. And it's hard to realize that when you're going through all these things. But I look back at all the things that happened to me and all the things that I did wrong. And every one of them was a lesson. I learned from everything that happened to me that I didn't need all those things. You end up worshiping all the things that you have instead of God. And it took me a long time to realize that.
Well, all of us, I think, I'm like you. Sometimes it takes me a while, but boy, once I learn it well and want to help others. And you've done that so well since then. So, all right. So the auditors come in. They're obviously saying, hey, Houston, we got a problem here. What happened next?
Well, I pled guilty to wire fraud. The judge says you're as much a victim as you are a convict. And I disagreed with him. I said, no, I did something very wrong. And I spent 2 years in a federal prison, 5 years on supervised release. 2 days before I got out of prison, actually, my wife asked me to leave, so I had no place to go. I spent some days with my mother and then moved to Lexington. My children, I have a daughter in Charlotte, and I have a son in Los Angeles and one son here in Lexington. And one of those children speaks to me today. The other two don't. Don't have a good relationship with either one of those two. They're unfortunately the ones that have my grandchildren. So it hurts, but I know God works in His own time frame and healing those things. So I just look for the opportunity one day to build that relationship back up.
Well, and the thing, and that's one of the reasons I wanted to have you on here too, Reggie, because I know there's people listening that are in similar situations, don't have relationships with their kids or grandkids that they want. And I know you've been over backwards, because we've talked about this over the past 10 to 12 years that we've been really good friends. And, it's hard, but sometimes you just have to lay it at God's feet, don't you?
Yes, we do. And that's what I've learned. I've learned to trust God in His own timing. And we always want something right now. I've watched two of those grandchildren grow up. One just graduated from high school, and I haven't seen him more than 10 times in my life. And it hurts. But one day, God will work that out. And I know that. I trust God. I was saved when I was 12 years old. I was a Christian. When all this went about, I kept asking God why this would happen to me. But I have no answer for that. God has the answer. And I have to depend on Him to carry me through it, and He has. He's given me the strength and wisdom to share my story with others and to help them through the same kinds of circumstances.
Well, you do that so well, and I think that's one of the things when you go through something like you have, and I've shared my story numerous times on here. It makes you a lot more compassionate, doesn't it?
Oh yes, you don't care about the material things. You've always wanted the nice car and the nice home. I've got the nice 10-year-old car, and I rent a decent home, and that's all I need. I don't need all those material things to worry about anymore.
Well, and I know that's true, because I've seen it in your life, and unfortunately we're almost out of time with this program, but man, I hope you'll continue, because you're going to find out how Reggie and I came to know each other, and just a powerful story. I mean, the Bible talks about humble yourself before the Lord, and He will exalt you, and Reggie did that as well as anybody I've ever seen. And so we're going to be talking about that over the next couple of days, and so I hope that you will tune in, maybe tell a friend. If you tuned in late, you're like, man, I can relate to this guy's story, or I know somebody who can. I want to remind you, you can always catch our podcast. That's at our website, hopeishere.today. That's hopeishere.today. I'm Greg Horn, and we'll see you next time on Hope is Here.
Hi, I'm Tay Henderson, Executive Director of Lighthouse Ministries. In addition to serving meals twice a day to our hungry Lexington neighbors, we also provide shoes through our Michael's Feet ministry. In June of 2014, I noticed that many of the people we were serving did not have adequate shoes. If they weren't duct taped together, there were holes in the soles. The day that a man named Michael approached me with Scotch tape holding his shoes together, I knew I had to do something, and Michael's Feet Ministry was born. Now we are blessed to replace over 50 pairs each month, thanks to individual donors and donating businesses through WJMM. Please consider being a part of this blessing. Each pair you give replaces a battered pair and helps a battered person know they are loved. Thank you.
For more information on Lighthouse Ministries, check out their website at lighthouselex.org or contact them by phone at 859-259-3434.